I remember the first time I scrolled through the clothing store's website, my heart racing at the sheer idea of adding a dress to my cart. I'd never felt such a combination of anticipation and fear. Each click reminded me that this would be more than some passing impulse. I was no longer just fantasizing. I was making a choice that could change the entire path of my life. And when I finally pressed the complete purchase button, it felt like crossing a threshold into a world where every assumption could be turned on its head. The package arrived a week later, plain brown cardboard, no markings to indicate what was inside. Somehow that little box weighed on me like a massive question mark. I'd see it in the corner of my bedroom and get a rush of nervous excitement. Part of me wanted to tear it open the second it arrived, but another part wanted to leave it sealed, just so I could delay confronting the reality inside. I must have spent hours glancing at it, working up the nerve to peel back the tape. Finally, early one morning, I steeled myself and decided there was no point in further hesitation. I found a pair of scissors, carefully cut through the tape, and pulled the cardboard flaps apart. Folded neatly beneath a layer of plastic wrap was the dress. Soft fabric, a tasteful shade of blue, modest length, but undeniably feminine. I was 24 when I bought that dress. I had never seen myself as someone who followed fashion trends or even cared much about clothing. But the idea of wearing something so different from my usual t-shirt and jeans uniform flickered in my mind for years. I'd peek at dresses online, watch tutorial videos on styling, and linger in front of store windows, imagining how it might feel to wear something elegant and flowing. Yet putting that fantasy into practice felt like a faraway dream. Now the dream was real and lying in front of me, tempting me to step out of the skin I'd known for most of my life. For the first few days after the dress arrived, I only allowed myself to admire it. I'd stroke the fabric, hold it against myself in the mirror, but never actually put it on. Something in me still quaked at the thought. If I tried it on, that meant I was diving headfirst into a side of myself that I'd carefully kept hidden for so long. I had tried on dresses in secret once or twice before, but they were borrowed in hushed circumstances, and I never had one that was truly mine. This one was different. I'd chosen it, purchased it with my own money, and now it belonged to me entirely. Eventually, late one night, the city streets outside my apartment quiet and calm, I closed the curtains, flipped on the soft light of my bedside lamp, and decided it was time. I slid out of my pajamas, carefully tugged the dress from its plastic slip, and stepped into it. The sensation of the fabric against my skin was exhilarating. It wasn't overly revealing. It had short sleeves and a hem that fell just above my knees, but it fit my body in a way I'd never experienced before. I stood in front of the mirror for a few minutes, barely breathing, taking in every detail. I noticed how my shoulders looked in this style, how my torso curved, how the color complemented my complexion. My reflection felt surprising, but at the same time disarmingly natural. I stayed in that dress for hours, pacing around my tiny living room, sitting carefully on the couch, even brushing my teeth before bed while wearing it, just to extend the thrill. My mind spun with excitement, fear, and an unexpected sense of ease. I almost felt as though I was meeting an old friend I'd lost track of. If someone had asked me right then how I felt, I wouldn't have had the words to describe the intensity of it all. I only knew I couldn't go back to ignoring this part of my life. In the weeks that followed, I delved deeper, beyond just the dress. I spent entire evenings watching makeup tutorials, foundation, concealer, contouring, eyeshadow, eyeliner, lipstick. The list was long, and I had no real clue where to begin, so I started by purchasing a modest kit from the local drugstore. The first time I tried applying foundation, I used too much. It caked up around my nose and cheeks, and the color didn't match my skin tone at all. But I persevered, washing it off, reading more tips, reapplying. I discovered that blending took patience, that less was sometimes more, and that lighting was everything. It wasn't just about technique. Every time I raised a makeup brush to my face, I felt my heart flutter. A sense of daring would flood me. I'd stare at my reflection, noticing the subtle differences as I added eyeliner or shaped my brows. When I carefully placed the wig on my head, short, dark hair with a slight wave, I hardly recognized myself. But beneath the aesthetic changes, I was still very much me. Somehow, gazing at myself with the wig, the makeup, and the dress combined, I felt balanced in a way I'd never known. I let myself twirl around the room, feeling my new silhouette shift. There were nights when I'd laugh at myself, light-hearted laughter, not mocking, and nights when I'd feel tears slide down my cheeks because the combination of joy and anxiety was too much. Throughout this period, I kept everything hidden from my immediate circle of friends. I was a fairly private person. A handful of close buddies had known me for years. One of them, Sarah, had suspected there was a side to me that I wasn't sharing, but she never pressed. She'd make offhand comments sometimes. "You know, you can always talk to me about anything." I appreciated her words, but I rarely had the courage to fully open up. Still, the day came when I couldn't hold it in anymore. One evening, while we were chatting on a video call, she in her living room, me in mine, Sarah asked if I was okay. "You seem a bit preoccupied lately," she said, her brows knitting in concern. "You're not responding to messages as quickly, and you look like you've got a million thoughts swirling." I hesitated, not sure whether I should keep deflecting. Then I decided to give it a shot and be honest. I reached behind my laptop and pulled forward a wig stand where I had placed the wig. Holding it up in front of the camera, I said, "So, this is what's been on my mind." Sarah blinked. "Is that yours?" she asked gently, not a hint of judgment in her voice. I nodded. "I've been experimenting with cross-dressing, and I'm figuring out what it all means for me." I paused, feeling a wave of warmth rush to my cheeks. She offered a small smile. "I'm glad you told me. How does it feel?" I took a breath. "It's complicated," I replied, searching for the right phrasing. "I'm nervous about how people might react, but at the same time, I feel comfortable when I'm dressed that way." She nodded slowly. "I'm really proud of you for telling me. I'm here, always." That exchange lifted a weight from my shoulders. Knowing that someone else understood, even a fraction of what I felt, made the nights I spent practicing makeup a little less secretive, a little less lonely. Sarah started sending me tips, links to better foundation matches, suggestions on clothing styles that might suit me. She wanted me to feel confident in what I was doing. Our conversations became peppered with chatter about color palettes and scarf accessories. She even joked that we should go shopping together once I felt ready. At that point, a shopping trip in broad daylight felt like a faraway fantasy, but I felt a spark of hope nonetheless. As the days went on, I grew more adept at makeup. I learned how to shape my lips to look fuller, how to select warm or cool eyeshadows that complemented the brown of my eyes. I found the right wig adhesive that kept everything in place more securely. The clothing aspect, on the other hand, remained more uncertain. The dress I'd bought was my prized possession, but I wanted something casual too, maybe a pair of comfortable leggings, a simple top. So I browsed online stores again, heart racing as I added items to my cart. Soon, packages trickled in, and my closet began to expand to include a corner dedicated to my new attire. A pivotal evening arrived when Sarah invited me over for dinner. She lived across town in a cozy basement apartment, newly renovated, with a small living room and an even smaller kitchen. I decided it was time to show her Claire in person, so I spent the afternoon carefully preparing. I took a shower, moisturized my skin, and laid out my favorite outfit: the blue dress, a pair of modest black flats, a light cardigan. I used every technique I'd gleaned from tutorials to create a soft, natural look with my makeup. My wig was styled neatly, with a subtle wave. But as I stood in front of my door, keys in hand, that old fear clamped down on me. Could I walk down the hallway, into the elevator, across the lobby, dressed like this? My heart hammered so loudly it practically rattled my ribcage. I had a choice to make: flee back into the safety of my apartment or take that first step. Eventually, I forced myself to turn the doorknob, open it, and step into the corridor. I didn't encounter anyone on the way down, and maybe that was for the best. My knees nearly buckled with every click of my footsteps. Still, I made it outside, got into my car, and drove through the evening traffic. Each red light felt like a spotlight aimed at me, with other drivers able to see every detail. My imagination painted scenarios in which curious onlookers stared, but a quick glance around revealed most people lost in their own world. Nobody seemed to care. Sarah greeted me at her door, eyes lighting up as soon as she saw me. She wore a wide grin, clearly excited that I had come as Claire. She guided me inside, offered me a glass of water, and we ended up in the kitchen cooking pasta together. The whole time I caught her stealing approving glances at my outfit, and we both broke into little fits of laughter whenever I nearly tripped over my own feet. Heels were still unfamiliar territory to me. After dinner, we settled onto her couch. She asked me how I felt. I admitted, frightened, but also oddly thrilled, like I've leaped off a cliff and I'm waiting to see if I can fly. Sarah draped a blanket over our legs and nodded. "You've taken a huge step," she said. "It's normal to feel unsteady, but you're doing it, you know? It's real." We stayed up late, talking about everything: my confusion, my hopes, her own life updates, our upcoming schedules. Hours slipped by until I realized it was near midnight. She offered to let me sleep on the couch, but I felt determined to brave the ride home in my chosen clothes. So I walked out of her building in the crisp night air, the quiet streets of the city unfolding around me like some hushed cathedral. I even stopped under a street lamp for a moment, testing if I had the courage to keep going. After a deep breath, I continued to my car. And you know what? I made it home, heart pounding but intact, a tiny spark of courage burning brighter than before. The real test, though, wasn't visiting a friend who already supported me. It was stepping out into the public sphere, where strangers had no stake in my happiness, no reason to be kind or cruel. For weeks, I debated how to orchestrate this big moment. I told myself I'd just drive to a quiet part of town, walk around the block, maybe pop into a small store for a bottle of water. Each time the day arrived, I found an excuse to push it off. I overslept. I wasn't happy with my makeup. My wig wasn't styled quite right. Underneath all those excuses, the fear was overwhelming. Sarah, ever the encourager, texted me on a Saturday morning. "You said you'd do it this weekend. Don't back out." A part of me groaned, wishing she'd let me hide. Another part recognized she was giving me the nudge I needed. So that afternoon, I spent an hour meticulously applying my makeup. I picked a simple outfit, a flowy blouse tucked into a knee-length skirt, paired with comfortable flats instead of heels. I figured one challenge at a time was enough. The final touch was the wig, neatly brushed. My reflection filled the mirror, looking more polished than usual, but the knot in my stomach reminded me I was about to push myself like never before. I grabbed my purse, phone, and keys. I stared at the front door of my apartment, hand hovering over the doorknob, every nerve in my body telling me to lock myself inside forever. It was one thing to dress up in private or in front of a supportive friend. Stepping outside into broad daylight, where neighbors and random passers-by might see me, felt like the tallest mountain I'd ever faced. After nearly a minute, I finally turned the knob. The door creaked open, and a blast of sunlight spilled into my hallway, My heart pounded so fiercely that I could feel it in my throat. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and immediately felt a rush of cool air brush my legs. I tried to breathe normally, but my nerves had other plans. My eyes darted around, scanning for anyone who might see me as I walked to the elevator. The short ride down to the lobby stretched on for an eternity, my mind filled with possible stares, possible laughter, possible confrontation. But when the doors opened and I stepped into the lobby, nobody was there. Half relieved, half terrified, I hurried through the sliding glass doors out onto the sidewalk. My plan was simple: walk to the corner coffee shop, order something, and linger for a bit. 10 minutes, 15 at most. Then I could hurry home, mission accomplished. 1 block, that was all. But that single block felt like a marathon. I focused on keeping my stride steady, ignoring the tightness in my chest. Was anyone looking? Were they judging? Would someone say something mean? My ears felt so attuned to every sound that even the hum of distant traffic seemed deafening. At the halfway mark, a woman appeared around the corner, walking her golden retriever. My heart seized. My mind flooded with worst-case scenarios. She might stare. She might do a double take. She might shout something. But as she passed, she simply offered a casual smile and a gentle, "Good afternoon." Her dog glanced at me, tail wagging, and they kept walking. Nothing happened. My cheeks warmed with the surprise of normalcy. That small, everyday courtesy felt like a gift. I replayed it in my head. She had greeted me like she would greet anyone else. She didn't treat me like a spectacle. A wave of relief coursed through me, and for just a moment, all my doubts faded. It almost felt like my feet lifted off the ground. I continued on, a bit more confident now, and pushed open the door to the coffee shop. The barista behind the counter wore a welcoming smile. "Good afternoon," she said. "What can I get for you?" Her tone was genuine, her gaze meeting mine without any sign of confusion or ridicule. My voice trembled a little as I ordered a latte. She nodded, rang me up, and I tapped my card on the machine, trying to look casual despite my heart hammering. I waited at the end of the counter, the smell of roasted beans filling the air, the gentle hiss of the espresso machine accompanying my jittery nerves. Another customer stood waiting as well, a tall man wearing headphones. If he noticed me, he gave no indication. I realized I was holding my breath, waiting for a reaction that never came. Then the barista called out, "Latte for Claire?" My eyes snapped up to meet hers, and I recognized that she must have read the name on my card. She wasn't smirking. She wasn't making a scene. She was just doing her job. With a shaky smile, I took the cup. "Thanks," I managed, my voice quieter than I intended. She gave me a friendly nod. I found a small table by the window. My plan was to stay for just a few minutes, maybe even take the coffee to go. But a sense of calm started to settle over me. I checked my phone, browsed social media briefly, sipped the latte. My breathing slowed, and I could feel the tension in my shoulders easing. Outside, people passed by, going about their day, paying me no special attention. It struck me that in all my fears, I had built up a world where every stranger was waiting to judge me. But that wasn't how reality worked. Most folks were wrapped up in their own concerns, barely giving me a second glance. I stayed there for maybe 20 minutes, letting the latte warm me from the inside. A young couple entered, chatting about their weekend plans. A man in a suit rushed in, glancing at his watch, muttering about being late for a meeting. Life went on around me. I was just another person enjoying an afternoon drink. Eventually, I realized I should head home, but I felt no rush. I was relishing the simple act of being out in public, dressed the way I wanted. The best word I had for it was exhilarating. When I did leave, the walk back felt remarkably different from the walk there. I was still a little anxious, but that paralyzing dread had loosened its grip. The same sidewalk, the same buildings, yet I felt steadier. My footsteps had a bit more rhythm, my face was less tense. The fresh air seemed inviting now, not hostile. I stepped back into my apartment and slid the door shut behind me. For a moment, I leaned against it, letting the realization wash over me that I'd actually done it. I'd gone outside, walked a block, visited a coffee shop, and returned in one piece. My phone buzzed. Sarah had sent a message. "How did it go? I'm so excited to hear about it." I smiled and typed out a brief but triumphant reply. "It was okay. Better than okay. I feel amazing." The next few days, every time I looked at that outfit hanging in my closet, I felt a small pulse of pride. I'd broken through a barrier. But new questions bubbled up. If I could handle a quick trip to a coffee shop, did that mean I could do more? Could I try grocery shopping? Could I meet up with friends in a public space? My mind whirled with the possibilities, yet the fear remained, like a dull ache that never fully disappeared. I knew stepping out again would bring fresh nerves, but a first step has a way of showing you that further steps are possible. One afternoon, Sarah called and told me a few of our mutual friends were planning a casual get-together the following weekend, just a relaxed gathering at a friend's house. She asked if I would want to come as Claire. My immediate reaction was panic. Going to a friend's place was different from walking into a coffee shop full of strangers who wouldn't remember me anyway. With friends, there would be real conversations, possibly real judgments. But Sarah argued, "You don't owe everyone an explanation about your wardrobe choices. Show up if you feel comfortable. If anyone asks, you can just say you're exploring a different side of yourself." I paused, my heart pounding as I pondered it. I decided to run through the scenario in my mind. Would they laugh? Would they be supportive? In my memory, none of them had ever displayed outright hostility toward anyone for personal choices. They were generally open-minded, a group of adults who'd known each other through various connections. Still, making a public appearance in front of people I actually knew was a big leap. It took me 2 days to reply to Sarah. In the end, I said yes. She was thrilled. My heart was in my throat, but I told myself I couldn't stay hidden forever if I truly wanted to live more freely. The day of the party, I found myself a nervous wreck in front of my mirror again, adjusting my hair, redoing my eyeliner when it came out crooked. After an hour, I stepped back and took stock. I was wearing a black knee-length skirt, a maroon top with subtle lace trim, and the same flats I'd worn to the coffee shop. I had pinned the wig back on one side with a small clip. The look felt subdued, but graceful, appropriate for a casual gathering. Still, my stomach churned with anxiety. On the drive to the party, I had to pull over once to collect myself. My palms felt clammy on the steering wheel, and I worried I was going to sweat off my makeup. The radio played a series of pop songs, each one doing little to calm me. Finally, I reached the address, parked, and stared at the house for a solid 5 minutes, debating whether to text Sarah and say I couldn't make it. But then my phone buzzed. She was checking if I'd arrived. I took a deep breath and replied that I was there. "Come on in," she texted back. "It's all good." Gathering every ounce of courage I had, I walked up the path and knocked. One of our mutual friends, Marcus, opened the door. He looked at me, paused just a beat, then smiled warmly. "Hey," he said. "You look fantastic." No judgment, just a friendly greeting. It was the best possible start. He ushered me inside, and I stepped into the living room where several people were mingling. 8 or 9 adults, all chatting, sipping on soda or beer. Sarah came over and gave me a quick hug. "You made it," she whispered, relief shining in her eyes. I nodded, trying to keep my composure. A couple of others turned to look. Some recognized me, some did double takes, a few others continued their conversations, not even fazed. It was all happening so fast, my secret out in the open, in a room full of acquaintances. I could feel adrenaline surging, but nobody pointed or made a scene. A friend named Jenna offered a bright grin. "Oh my goodness, Claire, right? I love your outfit," she said. I managed to say thanks, hoping my voice sounded steady. A few quick introductions and reintroductions took place. Some used my usual name from the past, and I quietly let them know the name I wanted to go by tonight. Everyone was respectful. One friend, Nate, gave me a half-lidded look of confusion at first, but then shrugged and asked if I'd like a drink. I said yes, and he poured me a soda without missing a beat. The night unfolded with unexpected ease. The conversation turned to typical topics: favorite music, upcoming travel plans, work projects. Once or twice, someone might throw a glance my way, likely curious about my outfit, but nobody said anything cruel. In fact, the only questions that came up were from a couple of folks who wanted to know about my makeup technique or who wondered where I got my clothes. Their curiosity was friendly, not invasive. During a lull in conversation, Jenna pulled me aside. "I'm happy you felt comfortable enough to come like this," she said. "I know it can't be easy, but I think it's really admirable." I blinked, not sure how to respond, and settled on a quiet, "Thank you." Inside, I was reeling from how normal the entire gathering felt. As the evening wore on, we played a goofy party game that had us all laughing until our cheeks hurt. I felt like just another guest, nervous in my own skin, but grateful to be included. When I finally left, hugging people goodbye, nobody made it weird. Sarah walked me to the door. "See?" she said softly. "We don't have to handle everything alone. People can surprise you in good ways too." In the days that followed, I rode that high, telling myself that if I could handle a casual friend hangout, maybe I could handle more situations like that. Yet reality has a way of balancing out such moments. A week later, at the grocery store, I was feeling emboldened enough to shop while dressed in a simple blouse and jeans, women's jeans that fit more snugly, a style I found more flattering. My wig was on, makeup light but present. I was wheeling a shopping cart down the produce aisle when I noticed a pair of teenagers off to one side, whispering and snickering. At first I tried to ignore it, but it was hard not to see them looking in my direction and giggling. One of them whispered something to the other, who covered her mouth to stifle laughter. My face burned, my stomach knotted. I pushed my cart around the corner, but I could still hear them faintly. I felt my eyes sting with tears. My mind whirled with embarrassment. Part of me wanted to abandon the cart and leave the store immediately. But I remembered how I'd managed in the coffee shop. I told myself I didn't owe these strangers any explanation, so I forced myself to continue down the next aisle, double-checking my shopping list, fighting the trembling in my hands. A wave of relief hit when I saw them pass by and move to a different part of the store. Still, the moment stung, reminding me that not everyone would be as casually accepting or as indifferent as the woman walking her dog or the barista. It hurt, but it didn't break me. I finished shopping, paid for my groceries, and left with my head held as high as I could manage. At home, I sank onto the couch, feeling drained. My phone lit up with a text from Sarah, asking how my day was. I gave her the short version of the grocery store incident, half joking. "I guess not everyone's going to cheer me on." She replied with sympathetic messages, telling me I was strong to keep going. While that didn't erase the sting, it reminded me I had people in my life who saw me as more than a target for jokes. Time passed, and I found a sort of rhythm. I still presented as my old self at work, though a couple of close coworkers suspected I had something else going on in my free time. I'd often use weekends or days off to venture out as Claire. Sometimes it was just a quick run to the gas station or a walk in the local park. Other times, I'd meet up with Sarah or Jenna, who'd invite me to small gatherings, restaurants, or coffee dates. Each outing brought a mix of elation and nerves. I never really knew what reaction I'd get, so my guard stayed partially raised. Yet little by little, I felt an emerging sense of belonging in these clothes, in that makeup. The more I integrated these elements into my day-to-day life, the more they felt like an integral part of who I was. One evening, while I was sitting in my apartment painting my nails, I found myself reflecting on those first moments. The day the dress arrived, my trembling hand hovering over the cardboard box, the late nights spent fumbling with makeup, the initial terror of stepping onto the sidewalk as Claire. It struck me how far I'd come in a relatively short period. That memory of the woman walking her dog, who casually smiled and greeted me, still lingered in my mind like a warm light in a dark room. It was such a small gesture, but it had given me an unshakable boost. Sometimes, just one instance of kindness can fuel you for a long time. I decided I wanted to keep that momentum going, so I began journaling about each outing. I detail what I wore, how I felt, whether people reacted positively, negatively, or not at all. Over time, I compiled stories of small triumphs, a kind barista, a friendly passerby, a conversation with a sales associate who complimented my purse. I also noted the tougher moments, a sneer from a stranger on the subway, a rude comment from a random voice in a parking lot. Recording these experiences helped me see the bigger picture, that while hurtful incidents happened, they were far from the majority. Many people simply went about their day without giving me much thought. Months slipped by, and with each new experience, I became more adept at styling my clothes and hair in ways that suited me. I also discovered deeper parts of myself. I found that I liked subtle accessories, delicate bracelets, small hoop earrings. I learned that I preferred earthy tones in my eyeshadow, and that red lipstick, while dramatic, gave me a self-assured feeling whenever I wanted to make a statement. I experimented with different hairstyles for the wig, straightening it sometimes, giving it beachy waves at others. I even considered purchasing a second wig, maybe in a lighter shade, to see how that might look. Not everyone in my life reacted well once word started to spread beyond my closest circle. One coworker, who overheard a conversation about me, asked me directly if the rumors were true. When I confirmed them, he paused, frowned, and walked away without a word. The next few weeks he was distant and barely spoke to me. It hurt, but I tried not to dwell on it. Another coworker, however, stopped by my desk and whispered, "Hey, I heard you sometimes dress differently outside of work. That's really brave. I think it's cool." Small remarks like that helped counterbalance the negativity. In time, I grew more confident in subtle changes at work too. I started shaping my eyebrows slightly more delicately, wearing just a hint of concealer or tinted moisturizer. A few people seemed to notice, but nobody openly challenged me. One day, Jenna swung by my office building for lunch, and she did a double take. "Wow, your eyebrows are on point," she whispered teasingly, and I couldn't help but smile. Somewhere in the midst of all these changes, I realized that a lot of what once terrified me, putting on that dress, stepping onto the sidewalk, facing a barista, had become part of my life now. I was still anxious at times, especially in new environments, but I was no longer frozen at the threshold of my own door. Instead, I would slip on a pair of flats, grab a purse, and walk into the world with my pulse racing, but my determination intact. I recall a particular Saturday afternoon when I decided to visit a thrift store downtown. It was known for a varied selection of clothing, and I wanted to see if I could expand my wardrobe without breaking the bank. The place was bustling, racks full of items, people milling around scanning sizes and colors. Dressed in a floral blouse, comfortable jeans, and a light jacket, I blended in, or so I hoped. As I flipped through a rack of skirts, I felt a tap on my shoulder. A store attendant, a young woman with glasses and a bright smile, asked if I needed help finding anything. I braced myself, worried she might have approached because she questioned why I was browsing that section. But her expression was open and helpful, without a hint of disapproval. "Well, I'm looking for a casual skirt, maybe knee length," I replied, my voice steady. She nodded enthusiastically, pointed me toward a rack where she thought I'd find my size, then left me to it. Her nonchalance felt like a gift. I spent a happy hour trying on various pieces, marveling at how many styles there were and how each one offered a slightly different feel. I ended up leaving with a flowy maroon skirt that had a subtle pleat. At the register, she complimented my choice. On the ride home, I couldn't stop smiling. Later that night, I messaged Sarah, excitedly showing her a photo of the new skirt. She texted back with plenty of heart emojis, praising how well it suited me. Moments like that were simple but held immense meaning. They reminded me that although I had battles ahead, I wasn't alone, and there were bright spots in the world where I could be myself without fear. In time, I learned that living this way came with highs and lows. Some days I'd feel unstoppable, strolling through a shopping mall without hesitation, ignoring side glances or smirks. Other days, my courage would wane, and I'd hunker down in my apartment, wearing baggy clothes, too nervous to step outside. Sometimes I'd be seized by thoughts of what certain relatives or older acquaintances might say if they discovered this new side of my life. On those days, I'd scroll through supportive messages from friends, reminding myself that I had allies in my corner. The memory of that very first time stepping outside as Claire never left me. My hand on the doorknob, the thunder of my heartbeat, the oppressive sense of danger lurking in every shadow, the surreal feeling that every laugh I heard was aimed at me, and then that one kindly stranger with her dog offering a gentle smile and hello. That was all it took to break the spell of terror, a moment of acceptance in motion, a fleeting kindness that put a crack in the wall of my fear, letting in just enough light to push forward. It wasn't a grand gesture or a life-altering event from the outside looking in, but within me, it was monumental. It represented a shift from feeling hunted by my own vulnerability to discovering my capacity to live in these clothes with my head held high. Even now, whenever I leave my apartment as Claire, I still sense a ripple of nerves. It doesn't vanish entirely, but it has quieted over time. Where fear once roared, it now whispers, "Be cautious, but be you." Where judgment once loomed like a massive storm cloud, it now appears as an occasional drizzle, something I can handle with a quick shake of my umbrella. And where shame once pounded in my chest, I now carry a cautious, determined pride. Tonight, I'm sitting at my kitchen table, typing these reflections out. My new maroon skirt is folded neatly in a laundry basket, waiting to be hung up. My wig rests on a stand in the corner, awaiting tomorrow's styling session. My makeup bag lies open on the table, brushes splayed out like a painter's tools. In the window's reflection, I see a silhouette that once felt so distant, so unattainable, a figure that used to exist only in the realm of daydreams and online tutorials. Now it's just me. This is my life. My phone buzzes with a text from Sarah. "Movie next week? Wear something cute." I chuckle softly to myself. "You know I will," I type back. Because these days the biggest hurdle isn't the clothing or the makeup or even the wig. It's not even the occasional harsh reaction from random strangers. The biggest hurdle has always been opening that door and taking the first step outside. And each time I do, it gets just a fraction easier. I recall that day, the way the sunlight felt too bright, the way every laugh sounded like a threat, the heaviness of the blouse across my chest, the skirt brushing against my legs for the first time in a public space. Then that woman with her dog offering a smile that felt like a lifeline. It was the kind of moment you can't predict or plan. It arrived, and I seized it, letting it carry me forward. Even now, every time I think about it, my heart lifts a little. It felt like flying, and it still does.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.